A Triumph of Surgery by James Herriot. Mrs. Pumphrey was a rich woman, and she had a silky, golden, small dog named Tricky. Mr. Herriot was a veterinary surgeon, a doctor treating animals, who knew both of them, and he was concerned about the dog, which now looked like a bloated sausage, a swollen sausage. A sausage is a finely minced meat stuffed into long cylindrical cases and divided into small lengths by twisting or tying. Tricky's eyes were bloodshot and rheumy, having a watery discharge from a mucous membrane of the eye, and his tongue was lolling, drooping from his jaws. Mrs. Pumphrey informed the doctor that her pet was listless, absolutely inactive, and he seemed to have no energy. She thought that he was suffering from malnutrition, undernourishment, so she started feeding him between meals. She was feeding him malt, cod liver oil, and a bowl of Horlicks. She thought that it was nothing much. The doctor warned her to cut down on sweet things. She said that she had, but Tricky seemed to be so weak, so she had to relent, give in, and she started giving him cream cakes and chocolates. The doctor looked at the dog and realized that the only fault of the dog was that he was greedy. He could never refuse food. He could undertake a meal at any hour of the day or night. He asked her if she was giving Tricky plenty of exercise. Mrs. Pumphrey said that he had little walks with her, but as her gardener, Mr. Hodgkin, was down with lumbago, muscular pain in the lower part of his back, Tricky was not able to play any ring-throwing game. The doctor tried to sound severe, strict, and warned her that if she didn't cut down on or decrease her pet's food and give him exercise, then he was going to be ill. Mrs. Pumphrey wrung her hands, displayed that she was worried, but didn't address the issue. She conceded that she found it difficult to do so. However, she was determined to put the new regime, the new routine into practice immediately. When the doctor saw Tricky again, he was tottering, walking slowly but unsteadily, in his tweed, in his woolen coat. Mrs. Pumphrey's pet had a wardrobe of coats for every season. He even had a raincoat. Then one day he received a call from Mrs. Pumphrey. She was distraught, worried, as Tricky had stopped eating and had spells of vomiting. The doctor knew that he had to get him to his surgery from the house, so he told Mrs. Pumphrey that her dog needed to be hospitalized and kept under observation. The poor lady swooned, almost fainted, as she was not ready for it. She felt her dog would pine, would long for her, and would die if he didn't see her every day. The doctor took a firm line. He became strict and didn't listen to her. He carried the dog, who was wrapped in a blanket, to his car. The lady's entire staff came out and brought his things to the doctor's car: his beds, cushions, toys, rubber rings, food bowls, and coats. The doctor had to drive away, as his small car would not hold more things inside. When he looked into the rear view mirror, he found that everybody was in tears. On the road, the doctor looked at the pathetic, pitiful dog, gasping, breathing heavily on the seat. He petted the dog's head and spoke to him that he didn't have a kick, no strength in him, but he would cure him. At the surgery, the place where the doctor treated his patients, the household dogs rushed at them. They sniffed, smelt Tricky, but found the motionless dog uninteresting, and they ignored him. The doctor didn't use any of the things Mrs. Pumphrey had sent for her pet. He made a bet for him in a loose box and gave Tricky no food but plenty of water for 2 days. On the third day, Tricky began to whimper, cry softly, when he heard the other dogs. He became friendly with the other dogs and played with them. Later that day, the others were given food by Tristan in their bowls. The dogs ate fast, and Tricky licked 1 or 2 of the bowls after the dogs had eaten their meal. The next day, an extra bowl was kept for him. The doctor was happy to see him jostling, pushing his way towards his bowl. He had no medical treatment of any kind. He ran and had friendly scrimmages, fights with the other dogs. He discovered the joy of playing with them, being bowled over, tramped on, and squashed, crushed down. He became an accepted member of the gang, though he was a silky little thing in their shaggy group. He fought like a tiger for his share at meal times and hunted rats in the old hen house at night. He had never had such a time in his life. Mrs. Pumphrey used to ring a dozen times, asking for the latest bulletins, updates about her pet. She wanted to know if he had cushions for sleeping and proper clothes. The doctor dodged, avoided her questions. When Dr. Harriet realized that Tricky was out of danger, he informed Mrs. Pumphrey that her pet was convalescing, recovering. She thought that the surgery was over and now her dog needed to get back to being normal. So she started sending fresh eggs, 2 dozen at a time, for Tricky. But the doctor and his partners enjoyed them for breakfast. When she sent bottles of wine to enrich, improve Tricky's blood, the doctor and his staff enjoyed a couple of glasses at lunchtime. And then when the brandy came to build Tricky's constitution, his health, they had it after supper. It was a temptation, attraction to keep Tricky for a longer period of time, so that they could enjoy the goodies that came from Mrs. Pumphrey's house in the name of her pet. However, the doctor knew that she was suffering without her pet. So after a fortnight, he was forced to phone and tell her to come and collect her pet. Within minutes, about 30 feet of gleaming black metal, a big luxury car drew up outside the surgery. The chauffeur, the driver, opened the door, and the doctor could see Mrs. Pumphrey seated in the back with her hands clasped in front of her, and her lips were trembling. She was worried. The doctor's care had changed Tricky into a lithe, flexible, hard-muscled animal. He found her pet playing with the other dogs. He carried him along the passage to the front of the house, and the chauffeur was still holding the car door open. Tricky saw his mistress and leaped onto her lap and licked her and barked. The doctor helped the chauffeur to put all of Tricky's things inside the car. Mrs. Pumphrey was so happy. She thanked the doctor. She had never in her wildest dreams thought that her pet had got well by exercise and no overfeeding. She believed that the doctor had operated on the dog and had made him fit and fine. So for her, it was a triumph, victory of surgery.